All right, so that's the spiel for Evolution. So last week we were both in Seattle
Yeah.
for Microsoft's Biz Apps Analyst Forum.
Forum. I don't know why they wouldn't call it a summit, but they wouldn't. But it was, I'll tell you, look, I'm going to weigh in on this one reasonably big time. So what I'm about to say, by the way, you're going to see in a blog post that I honestly thought would be done today. It isn't even close to done. It's barely outlined. There's so much to cover. Now, I'm not going to cover all of it, but I am going to cover a few things. So just to be clear, right, 2017 was a year of rebooting for Microsoft due to execution against their vision, which was they have a very solid vision, which is they're not software and services anymore. Their mission, they want to be a mission critical centerpiece for all business in the 21st century. And that includes at an infrastructure level, at an applications level, at every level that it takes to run a business. The other thing which they don't really talk about, and Satya doesn't really include in his vision, but is part of it without even including it, is they're the only company I know on the planet, and I've said this, to be honest, since 2006. I mean, like I published this in 2006, that can actually meet your technology needs. When I say that, now that may not be forever, but when I say that, that means on the side of play and personal, and that's Xbox and and all the other things that are satisfied via Windows on the personal side, all the way through the enterprise on the other side. Now, Apple can satisfy a lot of the play and consumer side. They do not satisfy the enterprise. They suck at enterprise.
And they pretty much throw in the towel with enterprise?
Yeah, and rightfully. It's actually to Apple's credit that they're willing to do that rather than let egos stay in the way, because they're never going to compete there. Microsoft is end to end. Nobody else can even make I was thinking about, are there any non-technology companies can make that claim? But we're talking about technology enablement, so probably not. But I was thinking GE maybe, but not really. They're more on this consumer side all the way through to every bit of it, and probably more expansive than Microsoft. But they don't really on the enterprise business side. I'm not sure how they play.
How would you classify them?
Well, it's hard because and this goes to the other point. 5 years from now, Amazon could probably make that claim, right? Because they're not. Their AWS is competing with Azure, but when I look at all the surveys out there, as big as AWS is, the most trusted when it comes to infrastructure, cloud infrastructure in business at the enterprise level. When you look at every single survey, when they say who do you trust the most, it's always Azure, right? Or Azure, depending on who you believe, right? Right, Azure. That's the proper.
That's the fancy. I like Azure.
Azure is where I go to. Azure. What are you doing tonight? I'm going to the restaurant. Azure. Ciel bleu. Ciel bleu. Right? Azure. So the thing is that it's hard for a company to do all that and be successful. So in 2017, because they were rebooting in the business app side particularly, they went radio silent, really, with the Analyst in particular, right? And it was driving, to be perfectly frank, it was driving everybody crazy. But I will say, and this is to their great credit, last week they did a massive course correction with that. They invited, what roughly, was it 27 of us?
27, yeah.
27 analysts who they knew would had some influence in various spots, and I'd say there were probably, breaking it down overall, there's probably 5 or 6 from Gartner, and 3 or 4 from Forrester, and then the rest were kind of singular. Constellation had 4.
And who is Rebecca Wetman with?
Nucleus.
Yeah, I think they had a couple in there too.
Yeah, so then Nucleus had a couple, and then there were the independents, me, you, Esteban, and Josh Greenbaum and Vinny Merchandani. So they they were missing Dennis. I'm not sure why, because he should have been there. But they had most of the people who kind of influenced that universe in a broad sense. And they gave us aside from giving us everyone having a really good time, they gave us the material we needed to understand what they were up to. Like, look, I wrote a blog post November 20th, I think it was, where I basically said, I can only speculate on what the hell's going on with them, so I'm stopping coverage until I have enough information, and I'm covering them now because I have enough information. And what I realized was, rather than saying, well, why are you diminishing this business when it's core to your vision, I'm realizing they're not diminishing it, it's doubling down on it, really. They're putting more time, effort, and money into it than I actually expected, number one. Number two is they're evolving it really well, generally. There's some definite holes there. Number three is I guess the best way to put it is some of the stuff that they're building, they're actually... One of the things I didn't expect on the evolutionary side was how well they're evolving the platform, the actual platform itself. Look, this is a world of ecosystems and platforms we live in. They always understood ecosystems to a large point, although I think that one of the weaknesses they had was a little regression in that area. But that said, they did, let's say, two things I found to be, aside from just the information we got, two things I thought were really important to their future. One was the evolution of the Adobe partnership, which I think is mission critical to their future, really. It's one of those things where the integration is so deep, it's at the level of baseline core, architecture, right? And it's a really deep integration, plus the partnership itself is co-marketing and going out to market together. I mean, they're really doing a good job there. And the other thing, which I know you were playing with, which I'd like to hear what you were thinking, but was the Power Apps, actual, I'll call it like citizen authoring program.
Oh, they call it, citizen developer, I think is what.
Yeah, citizen developer. I mean, it's honestly, I saw that in its earliest incarnation. It was crap. Okay, this one was that was the best development platform when it comes to ease of use and power that I ever saw. For like an ordinary human to use too. Right. So you used it. You were playing with it. So what did you find with that?
It was very, beyond me using it. I'm not going to say who it was, but one of their PR representatives came in and said, because they brought a group of the Power Apps folks in, and said, "Hey, I'm on the PR side. I don't know anything about technology, but I would love to understand Power Apps." And they literally took her to one of the laptops they had set up, sat her right in front of it, and said, click on this, click on that. And they just walked her through building a very simple app. And by the time she was done in 5 minutes, she had built an app. It was showing up, where other people who had the right security clearance could see the new app and download it or put it on their instance. It was real easy. So I think, you're right. That's going to allow for folks who are not as tech savvy to be able to build some really interesting, very contextual to what they do apps that'll be able to run as quickly and is set up for mobile. And that was really impressive. The thing that I have some questions about, and I think overall, like you, I was glad to see it. I guess it was about 3 or 4 years since I had been to something like that at Microsoft. And matter of fact, we had talked about it on one of these episodes leading up to it. It's like, we got questions. Some of those questions were definitely answered. You could tell there's been a lot of time and effort put into, particularly how the Dynamics 365 apps work and how they work together with other parts of the portfolio, like with Office 365 and with LinkedIn. Although I have a question about that. But you can see there's a lot of emphasis on Dynamics 365, CRM, and working with the other pieces of the Microsoft puzzle. I think maybe the biggest question I have is, we saw the Sales Navigator integration with Dynamics 365, and it's a good integration. It's there's a lot of things that you go back and forth between those apps, and you can see it's tightly coupled. It's useful. The integration with Sales Navigator and other parts, like with Office 365, it's there. But my question is, you have to buy Sales Navigator in order to get the integration, the information between LinkedIn over to Dynamics 365. So it's like people really want the direct integration without having to go through having to have both Sales Navigator and Dynamics 365. And currently, you can't do it without both of those pieces.
You're so right. Okay, so 2 or 3 things. Again, this is not to in any way denigrate what we just saw overall, right, which I thought was just a significant, important, major course correction, gave me a lot more faith in what Microsoft was actually doing, right, and really happy about what I saw.
Right.
Okay, but now I got a complaint. Right. Well, they were holes, right? And the big one, what you're describing to me is it's got a sort of a tactical issue and a strategic issue. The tactical issue is this, from my standpoint. I think Sales Navigator sucks. I think it's a terrible product. I've thought it was a terrible product from the day it was born, and I don't think it ever got any better. And I also think it was the thing that was responsible for closing. And look, LinkedIn, you want to refute me? Come on the show and tell us you were wrong, right? Seriously, LinkedIn, you come on the show. But it was the reason that it was one of the most significant reasons that they shut the API down. Back in the days, it was still LinkedIn, because Sales Navigator would now compete with then Microsoft Dynamics CRM and Salesforce and everybody else. Now, if you look at their pricing, which is one of my general issues, because there were way too many bundles and way too many levels, and it was just, I'm not a pricing expert. When it boils down to it, I always defer to Ray Wang, who is a tremendous expert in pricing and contracts. And I'm pitching him, if anyone needs that kind of help, go talk to Ray at Constellation. Or call me and I'll put you in touch with Ray at Constellation. But one of the pricing bundles, forget the overall mishigas of pricing, but one of the pricing bundles was Sales Navigator and Dynamics CRM Sales, which even just what it sounds like is ridiculous. So that's like saying I'll buy Salesforce Sales Cloud and couple it with Oracle Sales Cloud, right? What's the point, right? Now, to what you were saying, basically, Sales Navigator is just middleware in this whole thing, right? It's not even an API call. It's just middleware, right? And from that standpoint, does it make sense? Well, yeah, if you're going to be so dumb as to keep Sales Navigator around and using that as middleware instead of it's just, again, if I had my way, you shut it down. You shut Sales Navigator down, throw it out, stomp on it a few times before you throw it out, then burn it, then code, then do a ceremony and throw it into the ocean, right? That's kind of what I think of it. As far as, because Dynamics CRM Sales is a perfectly good product at almost every level, which is a strategic one, which is opening the API up, period, right? If they really want to be a mission-critical part of business infrastructure in the 21st century, and that was my way of interpreting the vision, but varying people there tell me they really like that interpretation, which makes me think, okay, that's it, right? If that's really it, then you need to open the API of LinkedIn, because you have, like they're doing with what do you call it? They're doing it with other operating systems, like they're doing it with integration with other products overall.
I'll give you a really good example. Outlook. Remember when Outlook 5 or 6 years ago, all these other companies, all these other CRM companies knew they had to have a strong Outlook integration in order for it to be taken seriously. Now, they didn't cut off that. They let other companies do that, and it was important. And they had their own Outlook integration.
And then they had the partners' own versions of that, like Avidian Profit. Remember those
right,
kind of ones?
right.
Yeah.
So this is to me. It's now I know it's a bit apples to oranges because what really people want is the LinkedIn data. that's what people want. And they're willing to buy Sales Navigator and integrate it with Dynamics 365 because it comes with that data.
Right.
And so I guess, like you said, the question Microsoft has to come up with is, like, do they really want to be what they say? Do they truly want to be what they say? And if that's the case, then they're going to have to do something to open up LinkedIn, not just for their, benefit, but for the overall benefit.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but no. I would just like to see a Dynamics 365 data integration with LinkedIn without having Sales Navigator in the between. If you don't
look, and even open it up as a premium service. You pay extra to get the LinkedIn data with the API, but maybe you have a Salesforce front end. You remember composite apps, man? That's what it did, right? So,
right. You could have the LinkedIn fire hose, something. I don't know.
Yeah, but look, I mean, the funny thing is that on a lot of other levels, Microsoft, and you kind of saw the inklings of it, although this was strictly a business apps analyst forum, you saw the inklings there was they're doing a great job on the other ends, like with Azure and the way they're handling Azure, the integration cloud, the IaaS side of their thing, and the platforms evolution. I'd say if I'm looking at the over and taking Office 365 and, as you pointed out, integrating Dynamics 365 with that, but also rolling up so much other things under Office 365 so that you're using it not just as a productivity suite, but as a unified communications platform that is it's kind of like, here's Azure in this big, overarching side, and then in the core of it is Office 365, and then things roll out from the middle, right? With that, and then Windows kind of sits in the back of all of this. No one even talks about Windows because it's so ubiquitous. There's no point. It's like that would be the equivalent of bringing God into every discussion, right? It's just there, and it's always going to be there. And the reality is, you know what? As ubiquitous as anything on this planet when it comes to technology, it's Windows, right?
I have there's some holes, like you mentioned. I think e-commerce is one that they have to figure out.
With you.
Yeah, that's one that's. I like what they've done with the Adobe, for the marketing kind of high-end marketing solution. That partnership, it's a perfect fit. It's a great match. You can almost say, pull out the credit card and do the deal, do the whole thing. Right. But no e-com. I think going forward, they're going to have to really figure out what's happening there. Is it a partnership? Do they buy something? There's not really any high-end e-commerce solutions. Like you said, ATG is gone, Hybris is gone, Demandware is gone. The other ones, like Shopify is not high-end.
No.
Magento really is not high-end. No. So I don't know what else is out there that they can do on that end, but I think it's important.
At this point, it's essential. Look, every significant player is adding e-commerce capabilities again, and Microsoft's messaging. So what was it? Digital feedback loop was the big message, which is kind of a message. I'm not sure what to make it. It's so general it didn't really matter that much. But the one where they took CRM and they got rid of it and they call it now intelligent customer engagement. If you're doing that, you do have to have e-commerce because that is the transactional piece. Yeah. So the operational core of customer engagement is traditional CRM pillars, but the transactional core of customer engagement is e-commerce, and you can't be missing that, especially if you're calling your customer-facing technologies intelligent customer engagement. You almost have to have it by definition. Now, I would say, if I'm just sort of summarizing a couple of other areas, I thought what Microsoft did was serious course correction. When I say that, meaning I now trust in and believe that they are going forward in a big way with business applications and at surprisingly advanced levels. I thought they handled the event itself terrifically well. Even boil down to a couple of little things. The way that Fred Pullen, for example, handled time management, right?
He was on it. He was keeping everything.
He kept it right to it, but never offensively, never intrusively. He just sort of showed up at the right moments and made a comment, and somehow that locked things right back into place.
I was glad he did it.
Me too. No, he kept it under control, and it was terrific time management because, we're a pretty bunch of dumbasses sometimes about things, right? Right? Well, we are. I mean, we're going to be argumentative and this and that was kind of the world of an analyst, but and that's fine. It is what it is. But he kept all of that well managed, well controlled, and bravo, Fred, for that. And then the other thing, though, I do think I had two other concerns. One is a concern, and one is just can't believe it wasn't there, but I also can't believe I didn't tell them to add it earlier. So I'm not entirely blaming them because they had asked me about the agenda bit beforehand, and I went through it with them, and I really appreciated the fact that they asked me about it, and I didn't bring this up, and that's my mistake because I always bring things like this up. So the thing that I think that we were missing and we did not see was anything on the whole corporate social responsibility side and the good works they're doing, and I know they're doing them. When I was doing my political work back in the day, I met the guy in charge of I don't want to call it the political work because it was more the nonprofit work, I guess, at Microsoft. And he and I had a long chat one day, and he was doing great stuff. And they have a ton of but they don't emphasize that enough. And they didn't bring it up at all in the analyst forum. And that should have been there. And I'm only assigning 50% of the blame to them because they did ask me and I didn't say anything, and I should have said something and lured them to it. And to Microsoft, for that reason, I apologize, right? And that's an honest apology, by the way. It's not like insincere. The other thing I'm concerned about, and I am concerned about this, was the whole partner strategy is kind of strange at this point. At least, no. What we heard of the partner strategy was a little strange. And there's nothing to do with the person in charge of partners. She's great, but it has to do with what we heard, which was all ISV partners still. And we had the strategic partner, Adobe, there, but never heard another word about strategic partnerships, go to market, none of that, which is critical to thinking about ecosystems and critical to the ecosystem thinking, meaning, if you're going to think in those terms overall, you need to be able to establish those kind of partnerships on a regular basis because you looked at your ecosystem, you know where your holes are. They did that with Adobe. They have holes, they have a marketing app, and that's nice. It seems to be small businessy more than anything else from what I saw. They have partners like the Click Mentions who, hopefully having dinner with tonight. And, they have partnerships with those guys who can handle kind of the mid-market, right? And they have go-to-market potential all throughout their ecosystem. They have a gigantic ecosystem. I was surprised when they said they were consolidating it to one program because I actually thought they only had one program. But I remember, back in the day, many years ago, over a decade ago, they had 54 partner programs. Wow. Yeah, when I was writing CRM Speed of Light, I researched them because they have always been the paradigm for me of a great partner program. And I have written about them being the paradigm. And they took 54 programs and brought it in and made it one program. And then they had 650, at the time, 650,000 partners, wow, of which 30,000 were certified gold. Okay, but things evolved again, and then it spun out again, and apparently there were several programs, not 54, but a few programs. They reconsolidated into one, to their credit. But I think, given they're talking to analysts, they need to, especially at that event, but also overall, they need to refurbish, revamp, and re-energize the strategic go-to-market kind of partnering programs and extend that a great deal. And I got no indication that they didn't even really talk about the SIs, right? No, I mean a little bit. I think they talked about Accenture at one point, but briefly, maybe, but not really, right? And I think to Microsoft's, it's a requirement by Microsoft that they begin to build out that ecosystem, or at least talk about what they've got, if nothing else. Maybe they have it, but again, no information. But all in all, rock on Microsoft. That was really, really the right. You did it right. You managed the event right. You gave us the right, with the gaps Brent and I have talked about, you've given us what we needed to understand what you're actually doing when it comes to BizApp. I had a chance to meet James Phillips. I was really pleased meeting him. He's a great guy, good hugger, by the way. He's really good, proactive too.
Wow.
So, he's figuring it all out. You meet, the regulars like Param and Keyshawn and guys like that. They always know what they're doing. They always have known what they're doing. They always will know what they're doing. Yeah, so it really, really went well. And, but I do think from the standpoint of things we outlined that those are things they do need to act on and resolve kind of in the next phase. And they have to establish a regular drum roll, march.
Yeah, so it'll be good to see how things progress and how what happens last week carries over into the rest of the year.